The cancel culture. It's now cancelled one of the best cricketers in the world. Quinton de Kock, I'd say, is the world's best wicketkeeper batsman. Because for one, he's never intimidated. I mean, you just have to ask Australia's Dave Warner. Warner viciously sledged de Kock during the fourth day of Australia's test in Durban in 2018, but the South African just ground out in 83, and only in the tunnel into the change rooms during the tea break did de Kock give a mouthful back to Warner, who was so incensed that had to be dragged off by teammates. So when the cancel culture came for de Kock yesterday, it was always going to end ugly. De Kock was never going to back off and has now exposed the intolerance and the bigotry of the Black Lives Matter movement. De Kock, who's actually, what they say in South Africa, what a mixed race heritage himself, has never bent the knee to the Black Lives Matter movement to advertise that he's no racist, as many sportsmen now do, out of conviction or fear. He's never explained why he remained standing while teammates knelt, and he shouldn't have to in a free world. He once said, "No one's forced to do anything, not in life." Well, if only more people saw it that way. That freedom is no longer valued, not by the fascists of the cancel culture. Knee bending now is big at the T20 World Cup being staged at the UAE and Oman. The West Indies does it. Australia's been doing it. England did it. They did it too before their game with South Africa. But newspapers made much of a photograph of the South African team there with several players, including de Kock, standing while others knelt. Now, this expression of individual opinion horrified Cricket South Africa because Twitter trolls started to get busy. So it ordered all players to kneel because, it said, the different postures taken by team members in support of the Black Lives Matter movement created an unintended perception of disparity or lack of support. Now, this order was given to the players without consultation, as apparently as they drove to the ground to play the West Indies. Freedom of thought was forbidden. Players now had to bend the knee to display personal support for a Marxist-led movement that sets races against each other. Certainly my view, may not be everyone's view, but it might have been Quinton de Kock's view, who knows? Because yes, Black Lives Matter is in effect a racist movement. But let's not get sidetracked, because the real issue here is not racism, it's freedom. And who ever thought that Quinton de Kock would react well to an order to make a political gesture or else? And so Captain Tembo Bavuma made this shock announcement just before the game.
There's only one change. Quinny is out, Reza comes in.
Oh, right. That must be an injury.
He's made himself unavailable for personal reasons.
Okay.
In fact, it seems that de Kock is now out of the whole competition. And Cricket South Africa has no shame, no self-awareness. It tweeted, "Cricket South Africa believes success will be guaranteed if all South Africans stand united to build a new innings based on the pillars of inclusivity, access and excellence." But I have to say, a lot of hypocrisy there, because how can Cricket South Africa say a pillar of its team is inclusivity when it's just excluded a player for not sharing its political opinions? Of course, this isn't the only hypocrisy on show at the World Cup, as I said last night. The Indian team dutifully kneels against racism there too, yet makes no protest against India's most obvious form of discrimination, which isn't racism, but Hindu caste culture, with Brahmins on top and untouchables far below. But it is in the cancelling of de Kock that, well, that exposes the whole evil at the heart of this new race mongering. You know, the knee droppers, they claim to fight racism, yet promote race as our key characteristic and a fundamental divide. They want us to see their gesture as a brave stance against racism, but in part it's a cowardly act of submission. And the knee droppers claim to be for tolerance, yet are intolerant of any dissent. Or in the case of Quinton de Kock, the mere absence of assent. Because be clear about that, no one accused de Kock of racism himself. Here is someone who knows him well, South African cricket writer Lugani Zama, today on SEN Radio.
If you're asking me if he's racist or against Black Lives Matter, I'll unequivocally say no, because I know him personally and I know the work that he's done to improve the lives and the experiences of black players and black people around him for years and years, long before Black Lives Matter was a trend on social media. I think because the constitutional right was taken away from them, it was an instruction from the boss when it hadn't been previously discussed. And added to that, from my conversations with him before on it, he sees it as a token gesture, which has been watered down to almost mean nothing. It's something that you have to do to be seen to be doing the right thing. But his preference is to actually do the right thing, which he does in the way that he lives and the way that he interacts and the way that he treats people of all races.
So Quinton de Kock is not a racist, it seems, but is now damned as one for simply not making what he thinks is a hollow gesture. Now, I like a lot about ABC commentator Tony Armstrong, but this today from him was vicious and unfair.
How racist do you have to be to not just take a knee and do that in conjunction with your teammates to show, like to even pretend to show support?
There you go. De Kock's sin is not to give in and pretend. Woke virtue signalers now demand people pretend to support them even when they don't, and for reasons that the woke never bother to understand. They just want obedience. Or they'll smear you as a racist and end your career. Now, so many woke warriors now seem to me to be exactly what they condemn. Narrow-minded bigots and power junkies, preaching hate without pity or moderation, killers of freedom. You know, I've never heard of racists forcing out a player from international cricket teams, not since the fall of South Africa's apartheid regime. But woke anti-racists have now done exactly that. They forced out a player from the South African team, of all things. The new race warriors have managed to do what no old-style racists have in decades. And isn't that the kind of bigotry we once fought? Now, joining me is a cricket writer who covered that terrible tour of South Africa in 2018. I'll show you some footage of that confrontation in the tunnel. It's Ben Horne, senior cricket writer of the Daily Telegraph. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. This is an amazing development in the World Cup, really is overshadowing the cricket. Does this mean that Quinton de Kock's career is over?
Hey, Andrew. Look, yes, it's highly unlikely that we'll see Quinton de Kock play for South Africa, certainly in the near future, but perhaps ever again. The reports are out of South Africa that he's left the team in Dubai. He's flying out of the World Cup. His future would look to be perhaps as a mercenary playing 2020 cricket around the world, although that comes with its issues as well, because we're hearing that his Indian Premier League franchise, Mumbai Indians, who pay him about $500,000 a tournament, didn't like what they saw over in the UAE the other day and have gone cold on his future with them. So even beyond South African cricket, his future's cloudy. But the Big Bash, the Australian T20 competition, has expressed interest in his services, and perhaps Australian cricket might be a home for him.
Ben, how did this get so out of control? Because he hasn't bent the knee and passed things, and now suddenly it's a huge issue. As you say, it's affecting the IPL contract as well. How did it get to this point?
Andrew, basically, the photo that you showed before of the players taking a disjointed approach, I guess you'd say, before their first game of the World Cup against Australia. That photograph from Getty was, broadcast around the world. It's been published by a lot of news outlets around the world, and essentially it was that led to a Cricket South Africa board meeting where they were concerned about how this was being perceived, that the team was being perceived as divided on this issue. The problem's born out of the fact that the team has not been able to decide on an approach. Originally, no player was taking a knee. There was black players that felt that they weren't representing their people by doing that. So then there was an agreement that players choose what they want to do to respond. And then, as we've seen after this photos emerged after the first game of the World Cup, this mandate's come down from Cricket South Africa that it's compulsory to take a knee. So that sort of disjointed approach by Cricket South Africa to not have a plan, I suppose, is what's resulted in this blowing up to the extent that it has.
Now, you mentioned the IPL contract problem, but apart from that, what's the reaction been from the South African team, the players themselves, and from the cricket world generally?
Yeah, look, it's been a mixed reaction. The captain, Temba Bavuma, said, that the team was shocked, partly because of when it happened. This mandate from Cricket South Africa only came through the morning of their match against the West Indies yesterday, and they didn't find out till they got to the ground that de Kock wasn't playing. So there was shock there. Some of the other white players in the team that hadn't been taking a knee, I think there was relief on their part. They've received pressure from their communities to not take a knee, and being told by Cricket South Africa that they now had to, I guess, in a way, took the decision out of their hands. So on that level, I think there was a bit of relief. He has received support from former teammates and cricket experts, former cricket players, defending his right to his decision. And equally, he's been criticised by others for failing to support the Black Lives Matters movement.
Now, Ben, obviously, you're infinitely closer to the cricketers than I am, and you've covered tours in South Africa featuring him. What kind of man is Quinton de Kock?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, you certainly wouldn't describe him as a deep thinker, even though he was captain of South Africa until a short time ago. His gift as a cricketer is his ability and the fact that he doesn't really feel pressure. He just goes out there and plays on instinct and natural ability. So he's not someone that overthinks the game. I don't think he's someone that would want to be seen as a leader on any kind of political movement. So I'd say he'd feel quite uncomfortable about what's transpired. And he's not what you'd call a natural leader in that sense. And he's a player who's certainly his natural abilities got him a long way. But I think he's from a quiet, humble background in South Africa, working class background. So, I think he'd be quite shy about all the attention that's now come his way.
Ben Horne, thank you so much for all that. Really appreciate it.